Hey everyone, and welcome back to the network, where today we are going to be repairing one of my coworkers' PlayStation 4 controllers. And as you can see, this thing has definitely seen better days. Let's just put it that way. So this is actually 1 out of 4 that I was given. This one just happens to be the one that was the most well-loved, so I figured we could use it for a video. So as you can see, the very obvious issue with this controller is that the analog sticks are pretty much completely gone. Now, this is actually a super easy fix, as they just need to be replaced, and I have a bag of replacements here. So if you have a very well-loved PS4 controller and are looking to get it fixed, you can follow along with this video, as you'll most likely have some of the similar issues that this one is going to exhibit. I will have links to pretty much all of the replacement equipment down below in the description if you want to pick it up for yourself. There's some sticker residue like right in that area, and I don't know how well you can hear that, but yeah, there are definitely some very sticky buttons on here. Oh, these two are extremely crunchy. Even the triggers are kind of crunchy. This one's just straight up stuck. But yeah, without any further introduction, let's go ahead and get this thing apart. Now, to get into a DualShock 4, it actually is super freaking simple. You have 4 4 screws located on the back here. So all you have to do is kind of remove those, and depending on the level of love that your controller has received, it may be easier or a little more difficult. But once you get the screws out, I recommend getting like a little container or something to put them in, so that you don't accidentally lose them while you are working on the controller. And that kind of goes for any of the systems. Like if you're working on anything, definitely have like a little area to put your screws off, because the worst thing would be losing a screw during your repair, and then you just can't put the thing back together properly, and it's like, well, hot diggity damn. Pretty much the PS4 controller is very simple. There's like 6 screws in the whole thing, depending on pretty much which revision you're on. Most of them use just 6 screws, pretty much 4 here in the back and then 2 on the inside, and that's pretty much it. So once you get all of the screws out of your controller, you're going to have to separate the faceplate from this like little back grip area, and you can do that by just pulling down on sort of the grips, and that'll pop the bottoms free. And then you have 2 clips up here on the sides, on both sides, and then 2 clips down here by like the audio jack. To get access to these clips on the side, you're gonna wanna pull out the shoulder buttons, I guess you could call it, and you could just do that by using a spudger and just kind of wedge it underneath, and then you can pull these out. Now, they are on guide rails, so be kind of careful not to bend them down or up, as you may break the rails. But there you go. As you can see, this one is completely freed. Super simple. Then we'll go ahead and move on to the L1 button, which is extra sticky. And so just to demo that again, you just get your spudger down in there, which this one might be a little difficult because there is a lot of stick going on here, but you try to get it underneath like that, and then just kind of do like a little twist, and you will slowly start to free the button from its cage. There you go. See, they kind of pop out, and then once you get it out far enough, you can just grab it and pull it. Now, most likely when your buttons are like super crunchy and sticky like that, something's dirty. It's normally some sort of soda or something got spilled in there. But now that we have our shoulder buttons removed, we can go ahead and separate the front and the back shell, and then just kind of run our spudger along the side, and there you go. As you can see, we did pop that side free, and then we will do the same thing on the opposite side. So we'll go ahead and split a little bit, get our spudger in there and run it along, hopefully disengage the clip, as we are pulling out a lot of gamer gunk, so that is absolutely delicious. We love to see that. All right, and so we did get this clip removed, and in the process, the bottom ones also came out. Now, if these 2 down here at the bottom are kind of having issues when you're prying it apart, then you can slip your spudger down in the bottom of this sort of like separation thing, and then just lift up a little bit while pulling them apart, and then you'll normally pop those clips free. But now we have our back shell and our front shell somewhat separated. You do want to be careful, as the back shell is like connected to the front PCB via this ribbon cable for the light bar and the charging port. So we're going to want to very carefully remove that. Then we can set the front to the side as we quickly take apart this back housing piece, just so that we can give it a good clean. Now, because we are going to be cleaning this with soapy water, we don't want to get any of the electrical components wet. So we do want to remove the like sort of light bar diffuser and this little PCB for the charging port. It is really nice that these controllers are made modular. So if you do have a broken USB port, then you can just replace this board and you'll pretty much be good. And you don't even have to really go that far into the controller. So the first thing we're going to want to do is pop this little white tension box out of the way. There you go. So to unlock it, you just kind of pull it to the side and then lift up from the bottom, and that'll disengage the lock on this side, and then you can just slide it out because this side, as you can see, is toothed and it kind of goes underneath the thing. So we'll go ahead and set that off to the side. Then to remove this sort of clear, like translucent holding thing or piece of plastic, this little thermal pad that's underneath, it kind of acts as a spacer for the motherboard, and it also works as a thing to hold down our little diffusion thing. So you just want to peel that up just a little bit, and then you can go ahead and pull that off and out. We'll set this thermal pad off to the side just because we're going to get this this part wet, so we don't want to leave that in here, otherwise the adhesive might not work. So, and then you can go ahead and knock out the actual like sort of frosted diffusion piece. We'll wash that as well. And then to remove the logic board or the little USB port, all it is one screw kind of located underneath this electrical tape. So if you just want to peel that back just a little bit, just so that we can see it. There we go. And then you can go ahead and unscrew that. There you go. You got a teeny little screw. We'll add that to our cup of teeny little screws. And then you kind of just have to lift up and pull back because the USB port is kind of seated in this little like channel. So lifting up and then wiggling and pulling out should get this part free. Again, you do have the electrical tape, which is going to want to keep it in here. You can just try to peel that back a little bit. And eventually, there you go. You can go ahead and pull that out. Now, if you are having issues with the charging port, you would want to probably replace this. So at this point, I would take a look at what is listed down here. We have JDS 055. This board, there are technically 3 versions or 3 different revisions that look exactly like this, and then 2 that are a little thicker that were kind of seen in the original like launch model PS4 controllers. So just take note of that number for when you're looking up replacement parts to make sure that you get the correct one. Now this USB port is kind of okay. I'm going to go ahead and replace it anyway, just for the fact of showing it in the video. But note that unless your thing is like broken or it's kind of wonky, then you don't necessarily need to do that. But yeah, so now that we have our back shell sort of separated, we can go ahead and set this off to the side and shift our attention over to the faceplate. Now, what the first order of business that we will want to conduct is removing the battery. Now, to do that, we're going to want to unplug it from the battery terminal here. And always make sure that you grab it by the connector and not pull by the wires, because if you pull by the wires, chances are they will come out. So to pop the battery out, there is a little bit of adhesive. You could just insert your spudger on the little side of it, just like I did, and it should just pop right out. And then you can go ahead and set this off to the side. And then if we take a look at this, you can see that there is still one other screw. This is the last screw for the internals of the DualShock 4. Now, on some revisions, this screw actually holds down the battery tray like this, and in other revisions, the screw just goes straight through. So depending on your revision, either you'll have to remove the screw before you can pull this out, or you can pull this out and then remove the screw. Regardless, any revision, that screw is always in that spot. So just keep that as a mental note. Then the last thing that you need to do in order to remove the sort of guts of the controller is to remove this ribbon cable right here, which this ribbon cable is for the touchpad. So you can just grab it by the sort of blue or sometimes like brown little pull tab, and then just kind of rock it back and forth until it comes out. And once it's out, you are good to lift out the main motherboard. So just carefully remove it, and it should just slide right out here. There we go. So here you have the front with all the membranes and your buttons, and here you have the main control board. So we will set this off to the side for now. We'll come back to it because this is where we're going to fix our sort of broken thumbsticks. But first we will go ahead and prep the front shell for cleaning. Now to remove the touchpad, you kind of like lift the back portion, like back here, like lift it up, and then slide the front of it underneath, and then there is your touchpad removed. Now again, we don't want to get this thing wet because it is an electrical component. Getting water on this is not good. And then as you can kind of see, when we get to our cleaning portion from the front, we will want to go along the edge of this with some isopropyl alcohol and kind of remove some of that gamer gunk, because that can lead to our touchpad being kind of sticky. Now popping these buttons out, which I'm sure is going to be a really fun time, seeing as how sticky everything is. So we'll just pull this membrane off, and as you can see, this membrane should be almost completely clear, but it is a little grotty. See, there is a lot of spillage inside of the terminal here. Then we're going to want to pull off the home button and its accompanying membrane, and then finally the face buttons and its membrane. So it's really simple to get the shell separated for cleaning, and then for the whole cleaning process, just hot soapy water. Let all these components soak for about 10 minutes, and then take a old toothbrush or something and then just scrub all the parts down, and then completely let them air dry for at least a few hours before you put it back together, because again, you don't want to get any sort of water trapped inside of this controller, because it can ultimately lead to a very bad time. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wash all of these parts off camera, because that's just something that, it's pretty straightforward. If you washed a car or, pretty much anything, then it pretty much applies here. You just don't really want to use a whole lot of harsh chemicals on this. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and pop these into the sink, and then we'll come back and take a look at the thumbsticks and cleaning off that trackpad. All right, so now that the shell and the buttons are currently drying, we will take a look at our front PCB, or sort of like the main guts of the controller here. And the first order of business we will do is replace these thumbstick caps. Now these are actually super simple to remove. All you have to do is kind of pull on them, and then they will pop right off. Pretty much it's just a little plastic cap that goes on top of these potentiometers to make sort of the gaming experience a little more comfortable, if you will. We'll go ahead and set these old caps off to the side, because they're not going to be needed anymore now that we have these lovely replacement caps. And these are actually extremely cheap. I got this bag of like 8 pairs for $5. So yeah, if you're thinking that replacing thumbsticks are going to be like a really expensive sort of time-consuming experience, that really they won't. Because say if this is the only issue that you're having with the controller, you just, again, it's 6 screws, a couple clips, and then you just pop the caps off. Make sure they're lined up properly, because these are keyed. As you can see, there's like a little hexagon in there. Just make sure they're lined up, and then just click them onto the sticks, and there you go. Super duper simple in terms of a repair. But before we put this thing away, we are going to take a look at these triggers here, because they are a little sticky. And to solve that, we will take a little bit of 99% isopropyl alcohol and put that on a cotton swab here. And we will just go along the edges of these triggers just to dislodge any sort of sticky residue that may be, buried deep within it. This definitely seems like there may have been a little bit of soda in it that made this kind of a sticky little thing. Pretty much you want to go for all of the joints, because those are most likely the parts that will stick, or the sort of adhesive, or whatever sort of sugary beverage gets into. See, there we go. That one's pretty good. If we turn it over to this one, which this one didn't really have much of an issue, but we'll go ahead and give it a quick little wipe down anyway, because we are here, and that is just what we do. There you go. Now you no longer have sticky triggers. The last thing that we sort of need to get clean before we get our parts reassembled is the trackpad here, or the touchpad. So pretty much the only part of this that moves. I know that on the controller it's clicky. When you take it out, there is no sort of spring action on here. So we're just gonna go ahead and take our IPA soak Q-tip and then kind of just run it along the edge, because most of the time what causes the sort of touchpad to stick is gunk on this little bezel, because this interacts with the sort of like mounting point in the face shell of the controller, and if you have any sort of stickiness when you go to click down, you're gonna, you know, kind of pull it apart. So if we just get rid of the sticky now, then we don't have to deal with it while it is in the controller. And IPA in this sort of scenario is your kind of best friend, because it'll get rid of most of the stubborn sticky stuff that you just can't use soap on. And then if your Q-tip kind of gets a little gross like this, swap over to the other end and then apply some fresh IPA, because really all you're gonna be doing is just you know, sharing that sort of love, and we'll just disregard that little spill there. But yeah, IPA, why you want to use it on electronics is it dries fast and it doesn't leave any residue. Well, you generally want to avoid using it on plastics, because it can make plastic a little brittle, because IPA is a solvent. You generally don't want to use solvents on plastic, but you know, in this circumstance, it is probably the easiest thing to use, because again, we don't really want to submerge this in water. Otherwise, we'd have to wait like 3 or 4 days to put the controller back together. So we will just do a quick little wipe down on the front of the touchpad too while we're here, just to get any sort of residual grime off. And since we have this pretty well set up Q-tip, we'll also go over the contacts for the buttons real quick, just to make sure that we don't have any gunk on there. Typically, with the way that these PS4 controllers are set up, you normally don't get a whole lot of grime on the contacts itself, because those membranes are sort of like capped on the button. So if anything spills in there, typically it doesn't spill over onto this part of the board. But you know, sometimes stranger things could happen. You know, you could get like a little hair or some weird little bit of gunk in there. But yeah, so that is pretty much everything in terms of getting you know, the components of the controller cleaned. And so all that's left is to wait until the parts dry, and then we will come back here and reassemble the controller. So I will see you guys in just a second. All right, so it has been a few hours and our plastic parts are all nice and dry and ready for the reassembly. So I think we'll go ahead and start by installing the new USB port and kind of just reseating everything in the bottom here, because then pretty much we don't have to worry about it when it comes to snapping the two halves together. So I do have replacement parts here, JDS 055 replacements off of Amazon. So we should be able to just take one of these and then pop it in there. If I can get it out of here. There we go. Okay, so there's our new board. And here is our ribbon cable. So if we take a look at this board, you'll see, actually, if you look at this one, it does say JDS 50. So they didn't put the correct replacement parts in that bag. Hopefully there isn't much of an issue with that. I don't think there will be, but I guess we'll put it together and we'll see. So for this one, unlike with the JBS 55, where it's just a slot in for the ribbon cable, this one's actually one of the lift tabs. So we'll go ahead and grab our spudger, our prying tool, and we'll lift up on that little lock. There we go. And then we'll take our new ribbon cable here and just insert that. You do want the blue side facing up if you have this type, when Amazon decides they want to send you the wrong technical USB charging port. So you'll just go ahead and slide that in there. Make sure it's pushed in all the way, and then just pull down on that little locking tab, and you should be all good to go. Then we'll go ahead and we'll slot in the USB port. Just remember when you're putting it in here to kind of put the front in first. There we go. Are we lined up there? It looks like we're lined up. Actually, no, we're not. We just want to make sure that the top gets pushed down. There we go. Okay, so now we're aligned with the port up at the front, and this is all locked in. We'll just grab our little piece of electrical tape from the original charging port, and we'll just apply that right to this one. There we go. And then we will grab our teeny short black screw for this one. Sometimes they are silver in the controller. It does depend on the model. Just know that it is the short stubby little one, smaller than the case screws. Next, we will plug in the sort of like frosted diffuser that just slots right in the front here. It should click into place, which it did. And then we will go ahead and take our sort of clear plastic diffuser and just line that up here. The little notch on the left side gets slid under the hook, and then you can just push the rest of it down. And then we'll take our white locking tab. Again, similar sort of premise. You have a little tooth here that'll get slotted into the section on the left side of the controller, and then you can just push down on the right side. That should lock everything into place. Last but not least, we'll grab our little thermal pad and just put that on its little designated spot. You don't want it perfectly lined up on here. You do want to have it offset a little bit to kind of keep, you know, this side of the clear piece just kind of in place. All right, now that that's all done, we'll go ahead and shift our focus towards the front of the controller with all of the various buttons and stuffs. So I guess the first thing we'll do is we'll plug in our trackpad. So pretty much you're going to do the same thing that we did, but in reverse. You want to make sure that this ribbon cable is on the inside of this sort of support bar. So when you slide it in, just make sure the ribbon cable stays on this side of the bar, and then everything should just kind of click into place. There we go. So then I guess the next part we'll do is the D-pad, because it's super simple. Just slot the D-pad in, boom, just like that. And then we want to grab the D-pad membrane. You'll know that it's a D-pad because it kind of has like a square shape, rounded edges instead of full circles. Then when you go to slot this on, there are some little holes that are in the corners here. Just make sure those line up with the pegs. Just kind of push it through. It's all rubber, so should fit pretty well. There we go. Then we'll go on to, I guess, the face buttons here. So when you're looking at these buttons, you'll see these little tabs that are sticking out. Pretty much these are keys. So there are size appropriate slots on each one of these holes, so when you go to put them in there, they really can only go in one way, which makes installing them super easy. Typically the thicker part kind of goes in towards the center, so when you're placing them in there, you know, you can just kind of use that as a little bit of a guide there. Bada bing, bada boom, those are all in. Then we'll take our membrane for the buttons, similar thing to the D-pad, just line it up with the posts and push it down. Should keep everything in place. There we go. So then if we just turn it over to the front, you can feel that, yep, these buttons are a lot easier to move, as we did clean out all of the sort of buttonholes. And then last but not least, we're going to want to put in the PlayStation button. Again, it's keyed, can only go in one way, makes installation super duper easy, assuming that you can actually get it lined up with the keys. There we go. And then again, with this membrane, can only go in one way. Just make sure that you, push it onto those little tabs. So that is pretty much everything for the face of the controller, which means we can slot our motherboard back in. So when you're doing this, just make sure that your ribbon cable that's here, that's coming from your touchpad, goes through this hole right here on the motherboard. So it can be a bit tricky to do. I do recommend using a pair of tweezers for this part. If they are metal, just be extra careful because you can rip the ribbon cable. And if that happens, you will be definitely in for a very bad time. Let's just put it that way. But there we go. Once you get that all aligned, then you can just reseat that ribbon cable into its appropriate thing. Again, just carefully line it up and then just push from the blue tab, give it a little bit of a wiggle, and then it should get fully seated. You'll know when it's fully seated because this little black line that is on ribbon cable should sit almost flush with the connector there. The next thing we'll install is the battery terminal, because again, that screw holds the battery terminal in place. And we will grab our silver screw and just screw that in there really quickly. Now, whenever you're screwing into plastics, it's always good to like reverse thread it a couple times just to make sure that the threads are lined up with the post, and then you can go ahead and screw it down. It just makes screwing things in a lot easier. So if you do have, issues trying to just screw it into the plastic, do a couple turns in the reverse, get the threads lined up, and then go ahead and full send in. It'll oftentimes be a lot easier. All right, next up, we'll reinstall the battery. Super duper simple. Once again, just line up the connector, make sure that we are going in the right way. And then for this one, there's a little hook right here in the black. Can't really see that all this much, but you want to make sure that the cables kind of get routed underneath that, and then you can just press the battery into place, and hopefully that little piece of adhesive should hold everything. And then the last part for us to do, aside from putting in the case screws, is to reattach this ribbon cable. Now, just because this is a different model, I will kind of want to test the light bar before we fully close this thing up. So I'm just going to take our ribbon cable, which this one is definitely longer than the original one that was in here, and we will just connect it into that socket here on the main board. All right, that's fully seated. All right, now just to make sure that everything does work, we'll press the home button for a few seconds and make sure that the light bar turns on. Okay, it is not. That could also just be a fact of the battery being dead in here. So I'm gonna grab a charge cable real quick and we will test that in here. And if that doesn't work, then we'll just have to swap it back over to the original one, unfortunately, because Amazon just had to send us the wrong connector. Okay, so now I have a charging cable plugged in. So if we just slot this in here, we'll see if we get any indication that this is actually charging, which it does not seem to be. Oh, there we go. That's good. All right, so it does show that the light bar works. I'm assuming that the charging cable will work. It's just a matter of that this is not a PS4, and I've come to learn that PS4 controllers do not like to charge via anything else with this USB port. I don't know why. Don't get why. That's weird. But yeah, okay, so that's all good. Let's go ahead and tighten this thing up. So when it comes to putting the two halves together, there is a little slot right in here that this plastic tab for the light bar goes into. So you kind of have to put it in at an angle. But once you get that seated, then you should be able to just push everything together here. We can, there we go. All right, then we just snap her together. And then when it comes to installing our one buttons, just make sure you're putting them on the right side, of course. So you'll see that there are these two sort of tabs sitting here that kind of look like a U. These need to go into that socket right there. So this is the L button, so we'll just line these up. And then you can pretty much just snap these into place for the most part. There we go. All right, and then once you have both of your shoulder buttons in and your triggers all good to go, the last order of business will be to reinstall our case screws, and then you are pretty much done. So yeah, if you want a fairly entry-level repair, I definitely recommend looking at controllers versus consoles, because most of the time with controllers, it's just they need to be cleaned, or in this case, they need to be cleaned and a part needs to be replaced. Ultimately making them a pretty good, entry-level thing just for like getting into electronics or consumer electronics. But there we go. As you can see, we have our fully repaired controller. Of course, there is still a little bit of cosmetic damage. I don't think my coworker really cares that much. Plus, it tells, a little bit of the story for this controller. But as you can hear, or not hear, all these buttons are now moving freely. They sound beautiful, as they should. Our thumbsticks are fully removed, or fully fully repaired. Our trackpad or our touchpad works, and we do have a brand new USB port. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, remember to drop a like and make that subscribe button glow so that you don't miss any future content. And again, all the parts used in this video will be down in the description in case you want to pick some up for yourself. And if there's anything specific that you want us to repair, go ahead and leave a comment or pitch it at our official Discord server, a link down below. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.